Ukraine is
And
losing?
last time I brought this up, you know, you
Why do you
and
say
your
that?
comrades kept hammering. Well, Kursk, they have Kursk. Kursk is gone, right?
No, it's not.
Ukrainians have lost Kursk.
They have not. They still have forces in Kursk today. Not as much, right? Not as much of Kursk, but today.
They have a
Kursk.
single-digit percentage fraction of what they had, and the Russian forces are moving into Sumy. I'm following the war every single day. The Russians make gains every single day. The Ukrainians lose ground every single day, and we're dumping money into this dumpster fire.
Let's start here. Why did Russia invade Ukraine?
Well, Russia has always wanted to be to regain Ukraine. So Putin has said many times in his interview with Tucker Carlson and in speeches and in other statements that he wants to regain the imperial power of Russia, to establish greater Russia. And Ukraine, in his mind, is part of that project. He believes that they are ethnically Russian, that Ukrainians don't exist in a real way, and he just wants to bring them into his fold, right? That's his belief structure, and that's why he's doing this. This nonsense that people will say about, like, oh, it's NATO expansion, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. It's not. Putin has been very clear. He's doing this because he believes that Ukraine doesn't exist and Ukraine is part of Greater Russia, and he'll have it back.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of American propaganda version of whenever the enemies are going to.
That's what Putin has
said. Well, no, it's more complicated than that. As I think we're going to visit a lot here, a lot of the claims here that are being made are more complicated. There's more gray area than I think you're giving credit for. The reasons for the war in Ukraine are complex, and there's many of them. But some of the main issues are the disenfranchisement of millions of people in Crimea and the Donbass and really the east of Ukraine that happened in 2014 when there was a unconstitutional, unpopular coup that took place.
It's
not a distraction. That matters. If we care about constitutional order and we care about democracy, we can't just ignore it when it benefits our enemies.
Even if I grant you this.
Hold on, one last thing. The NATO expansion is also, of course, going to be one of the major factors. A few days before the invasion, a demand was made, don't let Ukraine join NATO. That demand was ignored. It's up to them. And then a few days later, the 2022 invasion happened.
It is up to them. Why wouldn't it be up to them? If we're going to, let me ask you this. Do you think that a country's sovereignty matters?
I think that a country's sovereignty matters to an extent. To an extent. I think
let me ask you a question. If the Colombia protesters, right, the ones who supported Hamas and things were like, you know what? And they're citizens. I'm not talking about the student visas and things like that. The citizens of Colombia were like, you know what? We hate America. We want to be part of Hamas now. We want to join Gaza. So we're going to vote to join Gaza. Do you think that would justify in any way, shape, or form Hamas coming in and attacking America in order to liberate the Colombian protesters who have decided that, oh, we want to be part of Gaza now?
It's disanalogous, and I'll explain why. A better analogy would be, let's imagine if Canada had an unconstitutional coup that was undemocratic and was against the will of the vote that had just happened, let's say. And there were parts of Canada that were thus disenfranchised because, like many countries, certain areas tend to vote for certain candidates more than others. And then on top of that, this new illegal government reached out to Russia and attempted to join SISTO and attempted to put Russian missiles on the border with the U.S. As a great power, it is myopic to think that the U.S. wouldn't do anything. The tanks are rolling in the next day. We were willing to end the world over the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, despite the fact that we had invaded Cuba in the Bay of Pigs just a year prior. There are certain lines that great powers red lines that they have, and one of them is, and Russia's made it clear, Ukraine, for many reasons, is one of the red lines here. They made that clear before the invasion, and they've made it clear since.
The question I have is, why Ukraine? What about literally any other country?
Well, I do
Burma?
think we should. I do think we should support Taiwan, for example, as another country where I think we should draw red lines and we should not let imperial powers come in and start taking chunks. And the reason why is because it's in our interest. And these are the key words. Ukraine is in our interest because Ukraine is connected to a lot of European countries. We have Ukraine isn't just the only country that borders Russia. You have Estonia bordering Russia. You have the Balkans, right? And you have, now Finland and Sweden and things, but they weren't part of NATO before the invasion. But this matters because the reason why a lot of countries in 2004 joined NATO was because they foresaw this Russian imperial aggression that was coming. They were worried over their sovereignty and they wanted protection from that. So if we abandon Ukraine, what that does is it sends a signal to our allies that are our actually allies, the NATO allies that we have, that, you know what, if it costs too much, then maybe we're going to abandon them too. And that creates a very dangerous situation.
But Ukraine is not an ally of the United States.
Ukraine can be, and I think it should be.
Sure,
And I think
but that's not what I'm asking.
It's an art.
Because it's not. And so it's understandable what you're saying, that if, say, Lithuania saw an incursion from, Russia brought troops into Belarus, and then, or Kaliningrad started launching incursions through the border, Kaliningrad.
Yeah.
But Ukraine's not an ally, nor are they a member of NATO, nor the EU. So for what is the reason the U.S. intervened in this regard?
Again, because it's in our interest.
What are those interests?
Sure. One of our interests
the military-industrial complex. That was one of the things you mentioned. It's creating American jobs. It's a way that we can
That is
on
one.
the military-industrial
Absolutely.
complex.
That is one of our interests. But another of our interests is create stability in this region. Because if Ukraine falls, like we talk about the cost of supporting Ukraine, we got to talk about the cost of not supporting Ukraine. What happens if we abandon Ukraine and Ukraine falls? What happens to our interests? What happens to the cost to American consumers? Trade, we have about $1 trillion, a little less, a year with Europe in trade. And if that is disrupted, right, it just hurts our wealth at home.
What would disrupt that?
So, for example, if Ukraine falls, a lot of our European allies will see us as unreliable. And I'll give you an example of this happening. When Trump canceled briefly, paused the aid that was going to Ukraine, cut off intelligence and things like that, the EU began to question its purchases that it was making from us.
Did it stop them?
When it comes to us. It has granted them, so the EU has talked about they are no longer going to want to source some of the parts that they get for their munitions and their things from us because we are no longer reliable. They're setting up, I'm not sure if it's in place yet, but they're setting up a system where they buy from themselves because they realize that, maybe under this regime.
It doesn't sound like that's related to Ukraine, though.
It
sounds like
is.
it's related to Trump's trade issues.
No, this was before the trade issues.
So you're saying that
This was before the trade imports and anything like this. This is when Trump canceled or paused, I should say, the aid we were giving to Ukraine that we had already allocated to give to Ukraine. He paused that so it wasn't coming in. He also canceled the intelligence sharing that we were doing. And again, like Europe is on this doorstep, and a lot of Europe are our allies, and they see and they're watching how America is going to support them because by supporting Ukraine, we are supporting them. We are making the world safer for them. And that's a direct benefit. It is not a wild assertion.
They're not an ally.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.